Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Poema podcast. I am James Prescott, your host. Welcome to the show. It's really great to be with you all, and I'm really great. I'm really glad you're here. And so today we have a new guest on the show. I'm really excited to talk to him. He is a photographer, and he's also a board member of Asexual Outreach and a member of the Pennsylvania Commission on LGBTQ Affairs. And has got a great story to tell us. So, welcome to the show, Marshall.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's really great to have you. I got introduced to you by a mutual friend of ours, Elle Rose, who's been on this show a few times and will be again. And you're part of the asexual community, the ace community, and because it's the Day of Asexual Awareness. Is that correct? Is that right?
International Asexuality Day.
That's it, International Asexual Day. That was by the time this goes out, this will be last week. But I wanted to kind of acknowledge that as somebody who is demisexual myself, so on the ace spectrum myself, I think it's really important to raise awareness and just to share stories of people who are on the ace spectrum and have that lived experience. So thanks for coming on. So just tell us a bit about yourself and your story.
Well, for those who don't know me, I was born in the 1990s, specifically 1993. I am a resident of the United States, Pennsylvania to be exact, and I spent most of my typical childhood, outside friends, etc. School. Well, I was homeschooled from third grade on to graduation. Um, Pretty much didn't really. I think my teenage years were a little bit different from a lot of people, and that's what led me into where we are now.
Is there anything? I mean, what in particular was different about it? Is there anything that you can share that, like, about those times that made it a bit more challenging?
Well, a lot of people my age at the time, they were into like dating. Everyone else was talking about sex, stuff like that. Um, but that wasn't my thing. I was kind of like I was more worried about video games, more worried about like the next episode of there's a show called Revolution. It was about a post-apocalyptic world. It was one of my favorites, but I spent more time on those type of things, like my favorite TV shows, stuff like that. And sex was the last thing I was thinking about, and I think that was the hint that I was sex repulsed. Um, and I didn't know the language to describe how I felt, and when people just assumed that I was straight, I didn't really feel comfortable. Or I didn't really. I knew I wasn't straight, but I didn't. I knew I wasn't gay, but I didn't have a name for it.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I know what you mean, actually, because when I was a teenager, I didn't. I didn't. I think I had crushes because I thought I was meant to have them, rather than actually wanting them. And I
yeah,
never thought about sex as a teenager, really. I mean, that's partly because I was in the church and, it was like no sex before marriage. But part of it was just I wasn't that interested. Like you, I was more into like my TV shows and movies and things like that. I was like really into all of that and my comic books as well. I read loads of comic books. And yeah, I never thought about it at the time. But you're right. It's kind of that is because it's just your norm.
yes,
You don't think it's different, and you don't then you realize other people are different, and they're all obsessed with sex, like, and they're talking about it all the time and making dirty jokes and stuff, and you're like not really in on it because it's not like a thing for you, right?
yeah.
Is that your experience?
It wasn't. The good thing is I didn't have parents that let's say pressure me into having like relationships or friends that. Well, there are some people who would be like, you should start dating, you should start this, but I just did not. And again, there are my people that you can be asexual and you can still date, you can still have sex. But I happen to fall on the very, 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 very end spectrum of asexuality, where I was not into those things. But it didn't. It took me until my early 20s to have my sister-in-law tell when I was trying to come out to her that maybe you're this, and I Googled it, and I was like, "Yep, that's definitely
me. Yeah. How did it feel with that? Like when you first realized what you were, like what was your feeling when that hit you?
Definitely a lot freeing. Definitely something. It was almost like winning the lottery. But the only thing I was particularly worried about is if there, if I was gonna be able to find more people like me. And that's when I started looking up different Facebook groups on social media, on where you can meet people like myself. And of course, I found a few of them, and it was definitely a journey after coming out, because it was just one of those things where I spent my entire teens living under people's assumptions and just thinking that there's not a name for myself, and that had me thinking that maybe like not almost playing into those assumptions, but kind of like thinking maybe I should start dating and stuff. But later on, I was kind of like, why should I listen to people, and why should I follow what other people want me to do? But at the same time, I didn't have a name for what I was feeling my entire life. So that was definitely when my sister-in-law gave me that the information about it. That was definitely one of those things where it's like, finally, I could actually breathe.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a sense of I definitely resonate with that. That it's kind of like, oh, that's such a relief. Like, I don't have to be what everyone else has kept telling me that I have to be for the last whatever years. When you kind of like, oh, it's okay to be like I am.
Yes, especially growing up in I'm African American, where culturally there is an expectation of getting married at a certain time, having kids. It's slowly It's changing as time goes on, especially with Gen Z coming up. It's those cultural norms are actually being dismantled. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's definitely It's definitely a. I think that's what also makes me feel freer in the sense of coming out now, as opposed of when I did it when it was still kind of not in this era. But it's definitely a lot more. It's definitely easier, but not 100% easy to still navigate, not just in my cultural space, but just any space in this country.
Yeah, because I mean, I live in England, and it's kind of this. I mean, we're not quite as conservative as the States, obviously, but like, there's still a lot of lack of awareness, I would say, about asexuality and the asexual spectrum, and certainly demisexuality as well. Like, that's because being demisexual myself. And I just actually should explain to listeners, if you're not aware, demisexual is when you don't feel sexual attraction to somebody until you form a strong bond with them.
Yes.
So, like, I'm currently in a relationship, but it's there was no sexual attraction at all until we kind of really grew close to each other, right? So it wasn't like, and that's just normal for me, right? So I don't know what it's like to look at a person and feel sexual attraction for them without even knowing them.
Yes.
Like, but I can find someone aesthetically attractive, like aesthetically pleasing, but not sexually attractive, like, until I really know them. Like, so it's and it is a different thing to heterosexuality. It is, and it's on the asexual spectrum, because you don't feel sexual attraction unless you actually get close to somebody, which is a very different thing. And I thought that was normal until I realized what demisexuality was, and Yeah, so I didn't even know until I was like somebody made me aware, like somebody made you aware.
Yeah.
It's the same, and it was actually quite liberating as well. It definitely can be. So, what's your journey been since then? Since you kind of realised that you were asexual and like finding community and finding relationships, as in terms of friendships and that kind of thing. What's that journey been like?
It's definitely interesting. When I came out, I started to go to like LGBTQI plus bars and stuff. But I think that experience led me into like activism and speaking out more about my experiences, where a lot of people were very surprised that I would actually just get all out there in terms of activism when it comes to asexuality, because I've always been the person that was kind of like shy and not like outspoken like that. But I think experiencing acephobia and trigger warning, acephobia and in queer spaces and even in straight spaces, that really pushed me to not wanting other people to experience what I experienced. Um, it and it really, not to say that it made it extremely difficult finding relationships within the community, but it definitely made me not as like it made me settle back in terms of like staying online and find relationships through there in terms of like Facebook groups and stuff like that, but not out. I mean, out in like physical space. But that's kind of slowly changing now that I've attended like pride events, where in my hometown, where and in the first pride I went to, there was no ace flags sold at the event and not hanging. But as time grew, by the most recent pride I went to, which was last year, the ace flags actually sold out.
That's awesome.
Which is very encouraging that people are like learning more about asexuality. People are learning more about the bisexuality and how vast the spectrum of asexuality is.
Absolutely, yeah. That's great. I mean, I'm glad it's just because there has been a lot of I didn't even know what acephobia was to start with until some friends of mine told me what it was, and I couldn't believe it at first that the the LGBTQIA community would be divided like that. Like, but it's a real thing, isn't it? I mean, what kind of thing? What does that look like for some people? I mean, just trigger warning, obviously, but
Yeah.
what does that look like for some people? That acephobia.
From my perspective, for instance, in a situation where I was on my city's advisory board, there's one of the reasons why I quit my advisory board in the city, where basically we look into the well-being of the queer community in my hometown. There was one person on there particularly who gave me a call outside of these meetings, where she was very like, she was like, I just wanted to call you about something, which was something completely different from asexuality. She was calling me about an assignment. And before I hung up, she mentions that when I met you, I just thought it was weird that we had someone on the board that doesn't have sex. And I'm like, I screamed, I said to her, I said to her immediately that that's not what asexuality is. Very asexual people who have sex, but it's just, again, it's a wide spectrum. I'm not really, I'm between sex and different and sex repulsed, if that makes sense. Even that is a spectrum, but it was enraging for someone to call me and tell me, and they just assume that that's what asexuality is. Then I've had experiences at Pride where someone thought asexuality was not having relationships, and I had to explain to them again that it's just having little to absent sexual attraction to other people, and it's a bad spectrum. And they still didn't care to get to know more about our communities. But acephobia is a vast experience, because sometimes it's you can. It's very like microaggression, like to very like blatant. Like there's been times where someone's been to my face and they're kind of like, almost like the attitude of "Why are you here? It's not for you." To oh, well, I hope that heals or you get that fixed. I'm kind of like, that's not how it works, and it's not It's not illness.
No, it's not. Absolutely, you're right. It's not an illness at all. It's just the way some people are. That's it. And there's nothing wrong with it. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. In fact, I'm quite grateful that I'm demisexual. I wouldn't want to, be heterosexual and be sexually attracted to everybody.
It's weird. I don't know how. Even my siblings were kind of like, how does that feel? Like how does it feel to not do that? Or my cousins, and it's kind of like, it's just who I am. It's just how I was made, and it's like I can't imagine how this would be them, but it's just like I'm very proud to be in the shoes I'm in, and I think like you shouldn't apologize for being who you are. It's especially in the climate that we're in now. It's very important to be proud of who you are in community.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. Everyone should be. Nobody should be ashamed to be who they are, and that's really important in the whole LGBTQIA conversation. That everyone in that community should have no shame of being who they are, and no fear, and that everyone belongs and everyone is loved and accepted and belongs as they are, and that. I think it's beautiful that there's so many different types of people in the world. Like that's why I love the rainbow, because it's just that kind of every color is almost represented on there in a sense, because you can get all different mixtures of colors. If you blend some of those colors together, they can make all the different flowers can come from that rainbow. Like it's a beautiful thing.
Yes, the world would be boring if it was. The world would be so boring if we were all the same. Like it's just like it's nothing. It's not. There's nothing bad it would being different. And I just think when people put on kind of like the facade of we're all the same, it's just they're not acknowledging that people experience different things and people have different experiences, and it's okay to be who you are. But it's just like. It's very when people say that, it's very sad that it comes from people who are the majority of let's just say assuming the majority of the world in terms of population, that they assume that we should all just like not speak about our experiences. But it's just like, how's that fair when you have the dominating space on TV, books, art, etc.
Yeah, you're right, and there's not enough media about the asexual experience, is there? Like, we don't. There's not many movies about. I'd love to see a movie about an asexual lead character,
Yes,
right? Or a demisexual one, like, or both, just to help people like realize that this is part of their reality. That these people, that we live in their world. We exist, and that we're part of the world, and
yes,
our experiences are valid. I think we need more of those stories in the world, whether it's true stories or just fiction stories. But so that we can just invite people into that experience and maybe help people realize that that's who they are as well. Yeah. Because some people, I didn't even know this was a thing. Demisexuality was a thing until about 3 or 4 years ago. So and I'm in my mid 40s, and I didn't know until I was in my early 40s until that I was demisexual. So it's just all these things can spread awareness, and we need more of that out in the world.
Yes, we definitely come some ways. I think we're still recovering from. I don't know if do you know the show House? the TV show House.
Yes, I do know the show House. I haven't really watched it, but yeah, I know what it is.
There is one episode that is a thorn in the collective of the ace community across the globe, where the person it was a patient in a episode where they are asexual, and basically House makes a bet with the doctor to find a quote unquote cure for this person's issue, and they really gave this man a brain tumor to kind of like say, see, that's why he's the way he is. And I'm like, yeah, this is not it at all. Like,
no, that's awful. That makes me want to not watch that show.
even my mom's a nurse. My mom's a nurse, and even when I told her that, she was like, "What the hell?" But that's not how this works. And it's just it's stuff. And it's the problem is I guess the background of the show. Apparently, they quote unquote did the research, but apparently they didn't do enough research at all.
They clearly didn't do any research. If that's what they think that comes from, anyway. Yeah, that's bizarre. Really, very sad. But and that just adds to the point. We need positive representation.
Yes.
In pop culture and media generally, and it's amazing that in 2023 that we're still in that place where we need to do more of that. But yeah, that's the world we live in, I guess. But,
yeah, it's definitely very sharp. 2023 has just been a very interesting year so far in terms of representation, because of course what's happening across the world with people trying to push us back into the closet. But again, I think as always we will definitely prevail at the end. Hopefully with more representation on TV. But I think one of my favorite, still to date, one of my favorite representations of asexuality was BoJack Horseman. Todd Chavez from BoJack Horseman. It was really refreshing, and it made me teary when he walked into the asexual meetup to see other people in the community, and that was something I dreamed of for years. I did get the chance to do that in real life with the Asexual Goddess. They're from Chicago, and I had to visit Chicago, and they decided to throw a picnic in the park overlooking the skyline of Chicago, and it was people from different parts of the community, and I met a few asexual people there, and it was one of the best things I've ever did, and forever grateful for them to do that, because it was something that I've been waiting for years.
Wow, it's so great when people come together in community like that, and you can just. There's safety in that, isn't there? When you're with people that are the same and have the same lived experience or similar in community. Yeah, that's powerful. So tell us a bit about some of the activism that you do, because you're in a couple of groups that do a lot of activism for LGBTQIA and especially asexual people. So tell us a bit about that.
I'm on the community, the PA committee on LGBTQ affairs in my state of Pennsylvania, and basically we look into like the well-being of the community across my state, different events, etc. And it always gets busy around June when Pride is happening. So basically, we usually do like a meetup across the, different cities in the state. Last year we did Erie, which is my hometown, and it was a fun meetup, and basically it was a chance for us to get to know the community here in my hometown, and outside of kind of like we're still recovering from 2020, So a lot of people were very happy to be able to get together and have a chance to get to know each other and each other's activism. Um, and also, it's a good chance for me to represent asexual outreach to the community, so, because there are estimated around over 100,000 people who are ace in my state.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
I got I got the I got the state to recognize Ace Week in 2020, uh, basically by proclamation from my governor.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yes,
That's really awesome. That's an incredible achievement.
yes. It's a fun process. The mail because 2020 was a big mess. They sent it over the mail. They gave me a copy in the email just in case if I couldn't get the physical copy on time. So I posted it on Twitter, uh, and I've been able to get it. I've been able to get Ace Week recognized from 2020 to 2022, and hopefully I get recognized this year. Um, but it's so far my state has done a good job with making sure that Ace Week is recognized. And I in asexual outreach, my fellow board members did a great job with making sure that we gave them like a blueprint of what we were looking for.
And what are the kind of things that you did in Ace Week to kind of raise awareness?
My mom does this tradition where she bakes a cake and she posts online every like Ace Week. She like come up with different cake themes and I'll post them online to make people kind of like educate people on the relationship between cake and asexuality, which cake is a huge symbol in the community. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, apparently the idea of cake being like a welcoming thing in the ace community and a symbol, what goes back to an Avon chat board in the early 2000s.
Really?
Yeah, and it was used as like a, I'm not going to pronounce it, but it's GIF, a GIF. Like,
GIF. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
basically that evolved over time into that and emojis and us making cakes, etc. So that's how it became a big thing in the community.
That's brilliant. That's really great. I love cakes as well.
Yeah.
I can't have too many of them, but but I love cakes. Yeah.
Yeah, my mom was fascinated by the tradition of like and like cake being part of queer culture, and I was like, yes, asexual people. That's how we greet or welcome people into the community and greet each other. Now garlic bread has definitely been added into the into the mix. I don't know how that happened, but I'm more of a cake person.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a cake person for sure. Um, Victoria sponge cake, especially. Like, I don't know if you guys have that in the States, but like, it's basically like just cake with like jam in the middle, like, and then like a bit of sugar on top, like whatever. It's delicious. I'm actually wanting some now, thinking about it, but because I don't have it very often. Um, Oh, that's fantastic. Like cake is a symbol. Oh, that's fantastic. I love that.
Yes,
Um, yeah, brilliant.
it's definitely one of those things where over time how the community can like take something and just be resilient with it, and
Mm.
it's definitely a conversation. When I speak to my allo friends, for those who don't know, allo is someone who's not on the ace spectrum. um,
Yeah.
but it's definitely a conversation piece when my allo friends usually when I describe to them what it means to my community, and it's just like they're like, "Oh, I'm fascinated." Majority of them are very interested in how that came to be, but you still have those who are very kind of like, "What's the big deal?" But I'm kind of like, it's a centerpiece of a community.
Mm. Yeah, that's very special. Like I love that when almost like communities have their own language for communicating things,
Yes.
and that's great. Yeah. So like obviously we're talking about asexual awareness.
Mhm.
There's probably a lot of people out there who are, maybe some who are listening, who are asexual and maybe haven't come out yet and haven't shared that with anyone, or wondering whether they are asexual. What have you learned from your own experience that you want to say to people, like in those places at the moment?
I'd definitely say feel free to reach out to like organizations such as Asexual Outreach um, or even in a safe manner, of course. It's definitely one of those things that helped me over time. Let's just say if I was out as asexual, but not to everyone at one time, and I was able to get in specific groups that helped me navigate of how I should come out to everyone or come out to more people. Um, Having an ace friend helped out a lot, like a big time. Um, Whereas if I wasn't doing it by myself, and it's one thing. I think that's one thing that I usually make a mistake in not saying, especially if I'm on other, if I'm describing how it came out, is it's definitely a big deal to have someone who's been through this to come out as asexual, and also make sure you have enough resources just in case something goes bad.
Yeah, that's good advice. I definitely would agree. For me, like it was really helpful for me to have an asexual or multiple asexual friends when not only to help me see that I was on the spectrum too, but to feel comfortable talking about it, and talk about it with my family, talk about it with my friends, talk about it on social media as well. Because just seeing so many people on social media sharing that with people and being honest about that, and having those friendships to support me when I kind of came out publicly about it, it was definitely was helpful for me. And there is a really good community on Twitter actually, like that I've found. If you look in the right places, that there's a few, and I've had some on this podcast as well, like my friend Elle, who's written a lot of things. She's writing a book, and they're writing a book as well about asexuality, and like this, they're really great people, and there's some great resources as well out there, more and more increasingly, to help people who are kind of wrestling with that.
Yeah, like
Um,
like for me, it was definitely also looking at different asexual, let's just say asexual people on TV and their content. Um, the asexual goddess, queer as cat, and Yasmin Benoit were the three main people that I dived into the content, right into the content, and it helped me come out. It helped me come out to other people, and also helped me like gain the wits to like I'm asexual and I don't care, like in terms of like what people think. Um, it's definitely very important to just again not be sorry about who you are. It sounds easy. It sounds like how I'm probably going to twist this up, but it sounds easier said than done. But at the same time, it's just like we live in a world where it's just like things are shoved in. I mean, at you in terms of like if you're not the majority, it feels like it feels like a lot of those standards are pushed towards you, and whenever you fight back, you get a lot of pushback. But it's definitely worth it at the end to say I'm not sorry for being asexual at all.
I agree. Yeah, there are challenges with it, but you're right. Like, I mean, as you shared in your story, like, once you realize who you are and you're able to own that and be honest about that, it can be liberating. And there are obviously there's struggles in that process, but when you actually get there, it can be quite liberating. You can discover new community and new friends and support and everything that you wouldn't have had before. And
Yes.
so, yeah, I think it's really great. All the things you do, like it's really, really important, and we need more people like you doing what you do. Um, and yeah. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Thank you for having
And just one, I guess one final thing. Like, what's the biggest lesson you've learned on your journey?
making sure that you make a lot of friends along the way, because at the end of the day, you could have um, like a bigger family at the end. Like I feel like I gain a lot of family being who I am and just finding a community. Like it's one of those things where I told my mom where you have your blood families, which sometimes it's not the best family, but luckily for me, I have a good relationship with my family. But I also gained another family in the process of I have so many people to speak to, grow older with, in the sense of um, just feeling like I have someone that's by my side and stuff. And it's one of those things where I'm very grateful for, and I it also helps me with my work, in the sense that we have a tight knit community, and it helps a lot too.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, and where can people connect with you online?
You can find me on Twitter at the Gentle Giant Ace. You can find me on TikTok for now, a Gentle Giant Ace. You can actually find me on asexualoutreach.org, where you can connect with fellow community folks, and you can also get into activism and advocacy for community. And you can find me on YouTube at Marshall John Blount.
Awesome, fantastic. I would highly recommend checking all those out. Thank you, Marshall, for coming on. It's been really great to have you on.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing your story.
It's definitely an honor. Thank you. Thank you. It's definitely an honor to be on here.
Thank you. Oh, that's very kind. So definitely connect with Marshall and follow all those links. And yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.